This is OFN NFL Preview on the Our Football Network with Mark Lawrence, Playbook.com, as we preview the 2020 NFL season. Mark, it's finally here. Thank goodness.
Yeah, my goodness, Greg, we're looking forward to it next week, the official kickoff for the National Football League. We've got some college football action a little bit spattered this week, so we'll get our taste buds wet this weekend and look forward to diving into the big pool next week.
Yep, we have a lot to dig into here. Before we get into our picks, I want to ask you, because you'll throw in some trends on a weekly basis, especially ones that make sense to the particular show that we are airing that week. And I figured, well, this is probably a good week to ask you, because you got a ton of them in the Playbook.com guide. And you can check out, of course, Playbook.com is available at bookstores like Books A Million, Barnes & Nobles. You can go to Playbook.com on the website. And I moved it. So here it is. I moved it because I was actually working on it for this week's show. So this is what it looks like. But there's a ton of interesting trends in here. We went over the Super Bowl loser trends last week, which really worked not against San Francisco twofold. And I also noticed one in your coffee cup emails, which I was getting. And you can, how do you get your coffee cup email if anybody's listening and they want to get your daily emails?
Well, it's real easy, Greg. You can just log on at playbook.com. There's an icon for the coffee club. I send it to you every morning, 6 a.m. sharp, to have your cup of coffee. And you can overlook the sporting card each day from a betting perspective with opinions. It's $10 for 30 days, or it's free if you're a Playbook newsletter subscriber.
Okay, so one of the trends I noticed on those daily emails was the Week 1 Cleveland Brown trend.
Yeah, pretty mean,
which we can talk
huh?
about next week for sure when we preview Week 1. But, I mean, this is insane. So Cleveland is, in the last 21 opening week games, they've won one game. They're 1-19-1.
They've won one game, exactly. And, you know, that just coincides with when they re-entered the National Football League in 1999 as an expansion team. So this is like a true Cleveland Browns trend, not, you know, trends from the past, but a true Cleveland Browns trend. They are 19-1 straight up in season opening games.
Now, the interesting thing is, and I always find these interesting with trends, because sometimes when you look at a trend and you figure, oh, this is perfect, but then but if it's, unless it's 0-4, because that's really perfect, then it's not perfect. So the only thing that keeps it from being perfect is the fact that the one win Cleveland has is against the opponent they're actually facing Week 1, a week from Sunday, Baltimore.
Yeah, that's a little bit of irony, if you will, because in those 21 season opening games, they faced Baltimore only one time.
So they're 1-for-1 Week 1 against Baltimore.
Yeah.
19-1 against the rest of the NFL.
Exactly right.
What would you do in that circumstance? Would you actually stay away from that sort of trend?
Well, you know, last year the trend applied because Cleveland was favored in their first game of the season. So you're putting a team into a role as a favorite where they have to win by a margin. Yeah. This year,
and they weren't playing Baltimore.
So now they're a healthy touchdown dog, and they're playing Baltimore. So, you know, I'm going to just use the trend for what it is and handicap the game when it comes up. I happen to like Cleveland here this football season here. I'll tell you, and I'm going to fade Baltimore a little bit this year. So the combination of those two would probably have me grabbing the points in that game. Maybe not having Cleveland win the game, but at least covering the spread. But we'll talk a little bit about them and those two teams in just a bit here.
All right. So let me ask you about your top trends. Give me some top trends that I need to chew on, and we'll go through each individually. Go ahead. Start. Give me one.
Well, I'll give you one that jumps off the top of my shoulders here that I know that is really, really good, and that's Maddie Ice has been just absolutely dynamite in home opening games in his NFL career. He's been 11 times he's opened at home in his first game, and he's 10-1 straight up and against the spread. So he kind of tends to draw a line in the sand, if you will, and gets the Atlanta Falcons off to a pretty good start. So, that's one that I'm going to be looking at really to start the football season. Now,
Go ahead. Again,
go ahead,
that's Atlanta. What's the exact number again?
Matt Ryan 10-1 straight up and against the
and
spread.
Against the spread. And who's their opponent week 1?
I don't have it in front of me, but maybe you've got it in the magazine there.
Oh, I'm sure I do. It's probably. I wonder if
Yep.
it's a division opponent because it could be, and if it is, it's Carolina. But I don't know. Go ahead. What's your next one?
Well, not so very many as far as season opening week trends go. I think the two best are the ones I just shared with you. We can put some coaches in great roles. Pete Carroll, great as an underdog. He won't be week 1, but the bottom line here is Pete Carroll's been great as an underdog in the National Football League in his career, and that's just been bolstered by Russell Wilson at quarterback. So obviously, Russell Wilson has some fantastic underdog numbers in his career. You've got the Teddy Bridgewater trend, where he's just been absolutely phenomenal as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. And when he has been in non-division games? It's in the Playbook magazine. He's conference games. He's 18-2 against the spread. Teddy Bridgewater is. So he's gonna be a healthy dog quite a bit this season here with the Carolina Panthers. But he's also a very trendable quarterback, if you will.
And by the way, the week 1 opponent for Atlanta is Seattle.
There you go.
That's a tough one.
And that's going to be like Seattle -1, -1.5, or 2.
It is at home. Yeah, it is at home.
Yeah, it's at Atlanta, right? So you won't have to lay points into a good Pete Carroll underdog or a good Russell Wilson situation. So you won't have to worry about doing just that. And then you're left with Matt Ryan, home opener, 10-1 straight up and against the spread. So
yeah.
I happen to do like Atlanta in that football game. I think that football team's going to make some noise. I'm going to tell you about them here in a little bit. Although I do like Seattle this year, but I don't like the cross-country travel for Seattle in the first game.
Yeah, I mean, because that's really, it's all, at least the first few weeks, or depending on the venue, is going to really just be about traveling. That's all it's going to be about. There aren't going to be many fans, if any fans, at some of these games. And that'll help. I know who I was talking to, I think it might have been Teresa Walker from the AP on Tennessee, and she talked about a couple of opponents early on, or you know what, it might have been Bill Huber, could have been Green Bay, but anyway, the bottom line was there was 2 really tough road games. Here it is. It's Green Bay. It's Minnesota week 1 on the road, and New Orleans week 3 on the road. So the Packers are in a pretty good situation that they don't have to worry about fan situations in those dome stadiums. So maybe they catch a break.
They just might do that. Green Bay has always been really good at, obviously, home on natural grass and really struggled on artificial turf. That even goes back to the Brett Favre days, where they struggled that way on artificial surfaces. So, it's sort of like getting used to the comforts of home. Your feet like the feeling of the grass at Lambeau Field, so forth and whatnot. So, there are good situations to be playing on or fading teams in roles like that.
All right, let's go with our predictions. And we are going to start in the AFC. So now it's a top 7, which means that there's only one team getting a bye. And I have no problem with that. I really don't. The only thing I'm worried about is the 7th team being 7-9. That's an ugly look. That's the only thing I'm worried about. Other than that, I don't mind that only one team gets a bye. I'm perfectly good with that. It's 16 games is more than enough games for teams to, and I think it also hopefully would make it interesting where you're not sitting players and you want that 1 seed if it's possible to get that 1 seed, and it's and if you don't get it, then that's it. Then it's all about positioning. But I like the 7-team format this year. What about you?
I think that was a deciding factor in the 7-team format here as well, because of the resting of the players on the 16th and final week of the season. where they scheduled division games, it was really a good move on their part to do so. But you still had an abundance of teams that had positions and situations clinched and had no reason to play the football games. Now you'll have teams battling for that number one seed, which will be much, much more important now because it carries the bye. So I think it serves two purposes, and I like it. I really do. I think one, it's going to expand the playoffs, and two, there's more drive and more reason to play the final week of the season.
All right. Well, we start with the very tough AFC, and there's just no question that the AFC is much tougher to decide on what you're. Even though it's 7 teams, it's still very tough to decide who those 7 teams are. Because I got to tell you, I'm thinking that maybe there's only a couple of teams, like 2, maybe 3, that I could say I feel really good about them making the playoffs. Other than that, it's like, wow, out of the other 4 or 5, it could go to 8, 9 teams, and it wouldn't be a surprise. So it's really tough. But I'm going to go with Kansas City as my number 1 seed. And then I'm going Pittsburgh to win the North, the Colts to win the South, the Bills to win the East, Baltimore, Tennessee, and Cleveland as my wild card playoff teams. So those are my 7. And I would say that obviously with New England, it's tough. To me, it's about, see, when I do this too, I try to also just think about, okay, well, Cam Newton has a hard time staying healthy. He's on a new team. He's got to learn a new offense. Is it possible he stays healthy the whole year, learns the offense pretty quick, the defense holds him in games early, by the end of the year, they're a machine, and Bill Belichick proves he's a genius again? Of course. Absolutely. I could see that. But I could also see Cam Newton getting hurt again. And if that happens, I don't think New England wins more than 6 games or 7 games this year, because I don't like anything that's behind Cam Newton. I don't care what they say about Jarrett Stidham. I don't think he's ready to, in his first year, to win more than, he'd be lucky to be a 500 quarterback in his first year. And that would be all Bill Belichick genius. And then I think you have a handful of other teams that I still think have a shot of actually being really competitive playoff teams. Houston, I'm leaving them out. I don't think they're going to be bad. I just think that's just a team I'm just going to leave out. And also Vegas and Denver. So it's going to be tough. But those are my 7 teams. What about your 7 teams?
Well, I have 5 of the 7 teams that you have. The 2 that I do not have are the Cleveland Browns, that's where my heart is, and I think they're going to be. We'll talk about them later about it being a sleeper team. They're going to have to prove it to me first, because it's been a long, long time for this team to make it to the playoffs. The other team, and I'm going to put New England in there in their place, and I'm going to rely purely on Bill Belichick, 100% purely on Bill Belichick. If Robert Kraft could get off of the charges of the happy endings days that he incurred in court, okay, Bill Belichick can find a way to make it to the playoffs without Tom Brady.
Yep.
Okay.
That's okay.
So yeah, I'm going to do that. And the other team I have in there is the Buffalo Bills, who last year we talked a little bit about them before, that they weren't really truly as impressive as their record showed last year. They just didn't score enough. They averaged just slightly over 18 points a game, but they have improved the offense. They really did it. They bolstered Josh Allen at the wide receiver position. He's got Noah Fant as a tight end. I think the offense opens up this year, and if it does, I think, number one, they'll push New England, or New England will push them, one or the other, in that East Division to do just that. And I think it could be enough for them to make it into the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the defensive aspect of this, my top 7 teams. I'm going to go with Buffalo as my 7th team.
Okay, so out of, because I have Buffalo too, by the way.
Yes, you do. Oh, I'm sorry. The one that I have that you don't have, I'm sorry, is the Denver Broncos. Okay, out of the West.
Denver and New England.
Denver, right. And I'm going to almost reiterate what I just said about Buffalo, the fact that Denver bolstered their wide receiver position tremendously in the draft. Okay, and now with Cortland, the wide receiver, they suddenly have a very, very top-notch wide receiver target for Drew Lock to improve with. And I also like Vic Fangio and his defensive ways about him and his skills. So if he can if he can screw that defense down and make the defense what they can be, and Drew Lock can move forward with this accompaniment of I think some healthy wide receivers here. I got them as being that team, and also one of my surprise teams later on in the show.
Okay. Do you have them in order, or those are just your 7 teams?
No, I just put them alphabetically,
Okay.
but but I can say
okay.
that to win the divisions, obviously,
But you
Baltimore.
Baltimore,
I'm going to
okay.
go Baltimore in the north. I'm going to go with New England in the east, and I think that is a crapshoot. I think that's going to go down to how those two teams fare in that
Okay.
series. It's just one of the weaker divisions, and I've got Pittsburgh as the runner-up in behind Baltimore in the north. In the South, I've got Indianapolis. I think that they're the clear-cut choice, the best team. They're the only one team from that particular division that I have moving forward here. And also out of the West,
Denver.
we've got obviously Kansas City and then Denver as the surprise team.
And let's see. And you also do you have? What am I missing here? Kansas City, Baltimore, New England, and Indy, Pittsburgh, and Denver. And then what's the third team?
New England. So alphabetically, Baltimore, Buffalo, Denver.
Got it. You have who's winning
And
the East? New England or Buffalo?
Whoever wins that series, but I'm going to say right now, New England.
Okay.
Until the king goes down, I'm going to say New England.
All right, let's go to the NFC, and I am going to go with Seattle in the NFC West as my 1. Then I'm going to go Tampa Bay 2 in the South, Dallas 3 in the East, Minnesota 4 in the North, and my 3 playoff teams. I was wondering about San Francisco because of that trend we talked about, but I'll put them in there. Is either San Francisco or New Orleans, because I was going to take one of those star teams out, but I decided to stick with San Francisco, and then go San Francisco, LA, and Detroit as my remaining 3 playoff teams.
Well, I like your Detroit play. I'm going to use them as a sleeper down below. And I thought long and hard about putting them in there, but I'm going to have only Minnesota coming out of the north. Out of the east, I'm going to have the Dallas Cowboys, who I think is going to make it to the Super Bowl, and I'm going to have Philadelphia on their heels. In the north,
is Philly going to be a playoff team? Okay.
Yes. Carson Wentz stays healthy. I would say
if
yes.
He stays healthy. Okay.
That's a big if. Okay. Minnesota in the north here, obviously. In the south, I've got New Orleans to win the South and Atlanta as the wild card team coming out of the South. Tom Brady and the Bucs stay home and watch the playoffs this year. A little bit of a surprise. And in the West, I've got Seattle and my surprise team, the LA Rams, as San Francisco stays home and watches the playoffs this year.
All right. So we're 3 teams that we differ in the NFC. I guess the only 2 that are really the top differs are Philly, Atlanta on your side, and I'm going with Detroit and Tampa on my side. Those, because San Francisco, that would be a big one. Actually, San Francisco and Tampa, you're both going against those 2, and those are some favorites in the NFC. All right, let's go with our predictions for the championships of each conference and the Super Bowl. So I'll let you start. So who is your AFC championship pick?
Well, I'm going to put what would be the 2 obvious teams, Baltimore and Kansas City, in the mix there. Although I think Baltimore is going to struggle this year just to make the playoffs, and because they do, I think they can make it to the title game, and I think they'll face Kansas City if for no other reason. I don't think there's a serious threat to Kansas City in the AFC this year. So Baltimore is there just by default, if you will, in that sense. But,
because you like Baltimore and Harbaugh as a long shot underdog team as opposed to a favorite.
I like Baltimore and Harbaugh better than I like Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. Okay,
that's true.
I think the coach gets them there more than Lamar Jackson does.
And who wins?
Kansas City.
All right, KC over Baltimore. All right, I'm going to have Indianapolis over Kansas City. That's going to be my AFC pick. And the other team that I was kind of close with was Pittsburgh. But I'm going to go Indianapolis over Kansas City. And in the NFC, I'm going to take Seattle over Tampa Bay. Who are you going to go with?
I'm going to play Dallas over New
Whoa!
Orleans. There we go.
Is that because
There we go.
the clapper's gone?
Well, partly because the clapper's gone, and this football team.
Partly.
Yeah,
Come on now.
partly.
If the clapper was still there, they would never take Dallas to win the Super Bowl.
The
To get to
clapper
the
was
Super
there.
Bowl.
I might not have him in the title game. Okay, I could say that. Okay, but what I do like, I love their draft this year. I mean, they had head and shoulders the best draft of any team in the National Football League, and every position that they drafted filled a need for this team. And I think it all comes together for them that way this year under Mike McCarthy, a new head coach. They are rid of the clapper. Mike McCarthy, I think, is going to be the man who's going to ring the bell for Dallas this year. I'm not a big Jerry Jones fan at all, but I just can't get past and overlook the talent that the Dallas Cowboys possess this year.
All right, so you have the Chiefs returning to the Super Bowl, trying to win 2 straight against Jerry Jones in the stands, in his suite. He'll be the clapper for this game, as that would be quite the ticket. That'd probably break a lot of records. The Chiefs and the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. Whoever has the coverage of that game be pretty happy. And I have Indianapolis and Seattle. And I'm going to go ahead and that's a tough one for me. But I'm going to go ahead and I just think top to bottom, coach, quarterback, everything about the team, even though Russell Wilson, in my mind, is the best quarterback in the NFL. But I'm taking the Colts over Seattle to win the Super Bowl.
Well, that's a nice long shot for the Super Bowl. The
Not
Indianapolis
bad.
Colts.
20-1. Not bad.
Not bad at all. And I'm going to play Dallas over Kansas City. So, I'm not going to play the favorite, the obvious favorite here. Kansas City came like this close to losing the Super Bowl last year, and they would have been the Super Bowl loser. And I would have been giving you all kinds of stats and facts about how they'll struggle this year. They didn't do that. But again, I'm totally enamored in what Dallas did in the offseason here. And the fact that it's very, very difficult to repeat in this league. And because of that, I'm going to back the Dallas Cowboys to win the Super Bowl this year.
All right, let's go with top 5 futures. Now, what we're doing is our top 3 have got to be teams that are under 30-1, or actually it could be whatever you like. But bottom line is the 2 out of the 5 have got to be the 33-1 or higher. So basically like long shot type teams in the top 5 futures. So my top 5, basically my top 3 overall based on the odds, and it makes sense, compared to what we've just talked about with our predictions, will be Tampa Bay at 12-1, Seattle at 16-1, and the Colts at 20-1. So those would be my top 3 futures. And then my 2 long shot futures. And I must say, Tennessee I was okay with at 33-1. But after that, it was hard for me to really think about a team that I felt could win a Super Bowl with odds in that area. So I went with the Rams at 60-1 because I think the odds are just ridiculous. And I think they can clearly be a playoff team. They're a playoff team in my book. And therefore, why not? They made the Super Bowl just a couple of years ago. And with that big number at 60-1, I might as well go ahead and take a chance with the Rams.
I do not disagree with you at all. In fact, I got the Rams as one of my long shot teams amongst the top 3 teams here. Very, very. I'm going to talk about the chalk here first of all. The chalk out of this in the Super Bowl, obviously Kansas City, obviously New Orleans, my 2 choices, and the Dallas Cowboys. Those are the top 3 Super Bowl futures that I have because I see those 3 teams battling and or making it to the Super Bowl.
What are the odds?
You got them. I don't have them in front of me.
Okay, I'll have to look for them. So Kansas City, Dallas, and New Orleans. Okay.
Okay, and for my sleeper teams, obviously the LA Rams is the team I think is going to really have a good bounce back potential this football season. And I'm going to throw the Atlanta Falcons in there as well.
Right, so Atlanta and the Rams. So we agree on one team, and that's the Rams at 60-1. Okay, now we had sleepers. Now the sleepers, we have 2 sleepers, and those are teams that what were the odds I said they had to be? Over what?
I think 25
over
to
25 to 1. Okay. And basically those were teams that basically just sleeper teams. Not necessarily that we thought we're going to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, but teams that we just thought were going to be better than people think, and we're going to make headlines, and maybe they make the playoffs, and maybe they make a run. That's based, but we use the futures number as a gauge of how people perceive the team. So go ahead and give me your two sleepers.
Okay, my sleepers are, and these are basically, as you mentioned, Greg, teams to outplay the odds. Okay, playing better than Vegas anticipates. From the AFC, I've got the Cleveland Browns, and I've got the Denver Broncos.
Cleveland and Denver. And of course, that makes sense with Denver. You have them in your playoffs, and Cleveland, the team you did not have in the playoffs. So, how did you feel about Cleveland last year? Because I know there were a lot of people. Well, a lot, but there's some people this year that were a little bit. I don't know if I want to take the Browns again because they maybe looked stupid last year. And I understand where they're coming from when they say that, because it happens a lot. You see these teams that everybody, they jump on a bandwagon, whatever the case may be, and all of, they're that sweetheart team, and then they make everybody look bad, and then it's usually, and then usually they go away from them. And I think sometimes they go away from them for the wrong reasons, but I understand why they go away from them. Cleveland's one of those teams. I didn't believe in Cleveland last year, which is the reason why I'm a lot more comfortable taking them this year.
Well, I'm doing the same thing. I thought they were a very overrated football team last year, and they bought into the hype, and that was what was their undoing. That and the fact that they had a true raw rookie head coach in Freddie Kitchens who was out-coached in every game that he played. They stood no chance. And with all the hype they had and all the push behind them, they found themselves favored in games that they should not have been. And the other part of the secret sauce to that, we talked a little bit last week about San Francisco crashing back to earth, not only because they're a Super Bowl loser, but because they made it to the Super Bowl as a 4-win team the previous year. Well, the Cleveland Browns were a 4-win team the previous year, and everybody had them in the playoffs last year. And that was just far, far too much of a jump for a football team to have to make in the Cleveland Browns case. I like their chances this year. I think the hire of Eric Berry as the general manager was outstanding. I love Kevin Stefanski as their head coach. He's going to give them a lot of consistency. And I think they did a real great job in the offseason building this football team up. They suffered a big loss as far as injuries go in the secondary with Delpit from LSU. I mean, they were counting on him. He was just blowing everybody away in camp. And then he ends up going out for the season. It was a cruel loss for the football team. They could have really counted on him.
And I tell you what, that Derwin James injury is even worse for the Chargers.
Yes. Well, I agree. When you're talking a key vital injury to every team, Delpit had never played a game with the Browns, so you can't really go all in and say that that's going to be a season-costing loss. You can't do that. But I do know that the Cleveland defense was shoring up, and Delpit was really, really, like I say, super impressive. But you can't talk about what ifs. You got to talk about what is. And I still think they're going to be a vastly improved football team.
Yep.
And they've got a major chip on their shoulder this football season here. So I've got them, and I've got the Denver Broncos for other reasons we talked about earlier.
I decided to go a little different route. I just felt that I already had a couple of teams in there that were long shots like Tennessee and Cleveland. So I decided I'd go to some really deep sleepers, odds-wise, and I went with Houston and Vegas. And Houston, because they didn't have them in the playoffs, and their number is so high at 70-1, it's like, wow. I mean, if you put Houston in the NFC, that'd be a lot different, of course. But 70-1, it just shows you how tough the AFC is. And I just don't think Houston's that bad. I mean, I know Bill O'Brien does weird things. I get that. But again, I have to keep reminding everybody, still, the guy has been a winning coach for Houston. He's their most winningest coach. You got Watson there, who's a superstar type quarterback. I know the defense is still kind of part of the problem, and I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. But I just at 70-1, I definitely see them being a lot more dangerous than that. And in Vegas, I've backed up John Gruden before, and I just think John Gruden's the right guy for Vegas. And whether it's Mariota or Carr, I think Vegas is going to be a better team this year than they were last year.
Well, I'm going to have them on my fade list, and I'll tell you why when we talk about season totals coming up here. For one particular reason, but to back up your Houston play here, it's not often that you'll find a team that's 71 odds that has won their division 4 of the last 5 years.
Crazy.
4 of the last 5 years. Okay. Yeah, so they're getting no respect whatsoever. They're the Rodney Dangerfield play of sleepers this year, especially in the AFC, and I can completely understand where you're going.
Yeah,
there.
Maybe I should just like put some money on Houston and the Rams to win the Super Bowl. Hey, you know what? I mean, if you think about it, if Houston and the Rams actually were in the Super Bowl this year, I guarantee you people wouldn't look at it as like. If you compare other 70 to 80 win teams, it's like the Giants playing, I don't know, the Bengals in the Super Bowl, Miami in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
It's in the Jets, right.
And it's like, that would be shocking. But it wouldn't be shocking for Houston and the Rams to be in the Super Bowl. So it's just crazy. So we'll see if I take it, we'll see if that actually matters in the long run. Okay. So, but anyway, talk about Vegas. What is it that you don't really see?
Well, do we want to skip past the NFC for our sleepers, or just go to go? Or I'll tell you about Vegas. Okay, what I don't like is their travel factor. Okay, they're putting on more air miles than any team in football this year. They've got a brand new stadium, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, that is going to be empty, hollow, nothing.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not going to be what the Vegas Knights had when they opened up that new franchise in Las Vegas, okay? And the other part of the equation is this. I feel that you're going to have a scenario, and we talked a little bit about this before, where Ryan Tannehill replaced Marcus Mariota and earned Comeback Player of the Year. If the other scenario that I see happening, Marcus Mariota replacing Derek Carr, and he ends up being the Comeback Player of the Year, you will be right, okay? But if Marcus Mariota has to replace Derek Carr, that means there's trouble with Las Vegas, and I don't know if they can bury themselves out. So I just don't like the travel factor for this football team, and I don't like the quarterback situation.
Okay. Let's go into the NFC sleepers then, and I'm going to take Atlanta and Chicago. I see where you're coming from Atlanta. The only reason that I just didn't put them in is that they still have to, in my book, get by Tampa Bay. They have to get by New Orleans and a couple other teams, and I just don't like their cutter. I don't, and I like the defense. I think it's going to be better, and that's huge. And I can see the offense being really dangerous. I can. It's just one of those things where when I'm making my predictions, the cutter factor kind of just I went, I'll keep them out of my picks, but I can see why you have them in your futures and in your picks. And that's why at 50-1, I think they're a really good sleeper. And then I went with Chicago at 40-1 as a sleeper because I kind of looked at them the same way with the Rams and Houston kind of. They're 40-1. They were real dangerous just 2 years ago. Nick Foles is now more than likely going to be the quarterback, you would guess. And maybe another year under a different coordinator than Fangio and Mac will be better. It's possible. So maybe Chicago is a lot more dangerous than we think as a sleeper.
They could well be. I mean, the quarterback situation is obviously going to have to clear up there, and Nagy's going to be under the gun this football season here. I think he's got to win or he'll be done. But they could indeed be, because I don't think there's a clear-cut runaway winner in the North. That's the only reason I had Minnesota as the one and only team out of the North. I thought Green Bay was really opportunistic last year and didn't play as well as their record indicated. I think that calls for a return to the North.
Yeah, neither one of us have Green Bay in the playoffs.
No, exactly. But my two teams in the NFC, one, the Atlanta Falcons, the team we're talking about here. I like the fact that they started 1-7 last year and they closed like a racehorse last football season here. I think that momentum will help carry over with them. You get a healthy Julio Jones this football season here with Matt Ryan. I think the combination could work. And I also see this love affair with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks and the public. Also, everybody has them going toe-to-toe with New Orleans, and you know what happens when you go toe-to-toe with two teams. There's a sleeper team comes out of nowhere, and I think that could be the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. The other guy is going to be the team that we've hit on a little bit here is the Detroit Lions. And I really like them to be a sleeper team. In fact, with a healthy Matt Stafford, when he didn't play last year, they were 0-8. Okay, he's going to be healthy this football season, and they have 5 players in this team that were starters with New England the
Oh
past 2
yeah.
years. So, you got that Mike Patricia New England factor working here. So there's going to be, a lot of commonality between those players that they picked up. I think that's going to help the football team as well. And again, just to throw it back to the NFC North, nobody outstanding there, and why not Detroit?
Yeah, Flowers and Collins and Harmon, and then you have Akuda in the first round. So yeah, I think this is on paper, personnel wise, this is best defensive team Detroit has had in some years. And with a healthy Stafford, yeah, why not Detroit? And the GM and the coach, man. I mean, the GM's kind of already done his work. Now the pressure's on Patricia. Because if they don't make the postseason, even if they don't make it, and I know there kind of is a postseason or bust deal, but I think as long as Detroit, because things have always been bad there, I think if they have a good year and maybe they lose out the last week of the season at 9-7, I don't think their coach and GM are going anywhere. So, but
I agree. I agree. I mean,
especially the ownership there, they're pretty patient, and I know they've kind of given an ultimatum. But I do think it's possible if they don't make the postseason, they could still be together for 2021. All right, now let's get to our top 3 win teams. Now, these are the to win total teams. So this could be over or under. And there were probably 3 or 4 teams that I liked that I couldn't take because the one service I was using would have like the number and, oh, I like that. And then I look and it's minus 170. Well, I can't do that because we always talk about that. I'm not doing a bet like this and putting up minus 170. I don't, minus 130 is my cutoff line on something like that. So the 3 teams I did was Seattle at 9.5 over. All 3 are over. Seattle 9.5, Buffalo over 9, and Tennessee over 8.5. Those are my 3 teams.
Okay, my 3 are going to be a little bit different. In fact, I have none of your 3. And when I look at season win totals, I'm basically trying to make under cases because for overs to get there, a team has to play clean all the way through, no injuries, everything has to go their way, and they have to improve on what Vegas has a perception of them being. So can they improve and stay clean and go all the way out? If they can do all those things and check all those boxes, there's a likelihood that they'll go over that total. But I would rather bank on the opposite happening, where there will be injuries, they won't be playing up to expectations, and who knows what happens in a COVID type season here as far as player personnel goes, shifting players in and out of the lineups here. So I'll start out with my first one and only over. Okay, and that's going to be the Detroit Lions for a lot of the reasons we just mentioned. I think 6.5 wins is a steal. In fact, I'm seeing 7 wins out there right now on them. And I think a lot of people in Vegas agree with that as well, that perception on them being the one team to go over the total. The 2 unders that I have are I'm going under 11.5 wins with the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm going under 10.5 wins with the San Francisco 49ers. For a lot of the reasons we mentioned, yes, Baltimore does play a real cushy schedule this year. They travel the fewest miles of any team in the National Football League. And as far as strength of schedule goes, it's very, very soft. But again, I'm going to go back to there is now good film on Lamar Jackson. And I think that's going to end up being the telltale for this football team this year. And the San Francisco 49ers, for a lot of the reasons we talked about before, the Super Bowl loser, the fact that they made it there after having won 4 games and everything regresses to the norm, I think it hits that team worse than any team in the National Football League this year. So they will be my number 1 underplay, San Francisco under 10.5 wins.
Okay, yeah, because let's see. Detroit over 6.5. That is minus 170. Baltimore under 11.5, minus 150. Under San Francisco 10.5, minus 125. So you got 2 unders and 1 over, and I have all 3 overs.
And I would suggest on the Detroit play, Greg, rather than laying 6.5 minus 70, which I would never do either, I would shop around, look for 7. And play 7 even and go under Perfect. 7 even.
Yes.
Okay, that's that would be the game
Absolutely.
plan.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Definitely good. Okay, so now next week we will have our week one. Well, every week starting next week, same day and time. It's all going to be about previewing games and going over a whole bunch of stuff that you can find at Playbook Magazine and a whole bunch of stuff that you can't. So that's going to be starting next week. We'll have picks, analysis, and so forth. And a couple of quick other things. And as far as the COVID situation, I'm hopeful that the difference between the baseball issues that you've seen, I mean, we haven't seen no basketball or hockey issues. They're in a bubble, so I can get that. The
Right.
baseball issues, I think, and I think why NFL could be different is because baseball, you're talking, they never get any days off. They're on the road all the time. And you're talking, of course, kids, and they want to eventually go out and do something where they're not in a bubble. But in the NFL, get on a plane. Now, the plane, it might be the biggest issue. But once you get off the plane, I'm assuming the teams are going to be very strict. You're going into that hotel room. We're all eating together. You're not going anywhere. You got the game the next day or 36 hours later. You get back on the plane, you go home. So I think because of that, I don't think the NFL is going to have as many problems as we saw in baseball.
I agree 100% with that, and it's a great analogy about the fact that they're not hopscotching around the country, with the band of players and having to hole up in different hotels.
Yeah, every 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be a big, big factor here. And one other thing I want to share with you, I learned from a real good insider, and this comes directly from an owner. And he approached the owner about the fear of the COVID and, what will it mean as far as the depth and the squad goes? Will there be enough players to play with, so forth and whatnot? And the owner's comment was, and it kind of took me back a little bit, is that we're not at all concerned about that. And the reason we're not at all concerned about that is because we have enough quality athletes in our roster that if we do lose a wide receiver or we're down to just one wide receiver, we can go to another position and ask a safety or a linebacker to play wide receiver.
That could be interesting. That could be interesting.
Yes, right, exactly. So, the whole bottom line, just cut to the chase. The owners are in it for the money,
of course.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they're not gonna cry wolf when it comes to players testing positive. They're going to go to plan B and plan C. So just watch for that throughout the course of the season.
All right, Mark. And then hopefully by next week, we'll get even better news on the Big Ten because there's actually a movement there, which is not a surprise. So let's hope they keep the pressure up and we can get some Big Ten and maybe even Pac-12 football and who knows, maybe even more before November, maybe by October. That would be great.
Hey, we'll look forward to it, Greg. I look forward to catching you next week when we start the football season.